Hello everyone, Fast Eddie here. First I'd like to say thanks to all my subscribers and for all the comments you've been sending in. I really appreciate it. This has been one of the biggest questions I've gotten, especially when I'm out riding. And if I go for a ride, say there's 20 people meeting up at this one location, or we actually get to where we're going and there's a bunch of bikes everywhere and people are walking around and talking. And I hear this a lot and people come up to me and ask me a bunch. They say, hey, why did you have this bike? Why not buy this bike? Maybe you should do this instead of that. So these are going to be my thoughts on how I decide what type of bike to buy. Should I get a 300cc bike, like a R3? Should I get a 600cc? Or should I get a 1000cc bike? And I've researched a couple of these videos that I've seen before about people talking about, this versus that. And let's think about this. So the first bike I bought was a CBR 1000. Now, that bike is extremely powerful and extremely fast, right? 1000cc, no kidding, full fairing sport bike. But I had the skills of the basic 2-day course in a parking lot. That's the only course I've taken, and that's the bike I bought. So what does that mean? That means I was pretty good at going 20 miles per hour in a parking lot. That's it. That's all. So now I bought a bike that could go, 180 miles per hour, and it's just insane. So think about it like this. If I'm going out on the twisty roads or whatever, if I could only go through a corner at 20 miles per hour, because that's as good as I am, I can't go any faster. I don't have the skills to. 20 miles per hour is going to be the same 20 miles per hour on a 1000cc bike or a 300cc bike. It doesn't matter what type of bike you are. You have a skill speed limit. You can only go so fast to a certain amount of corners. So why would you not want to do it on a lighter bike that's more agile with less power? So if you get on the throttle a little bit too hard, it's a little bit more forgiving. On a 1000cc bike and you do this, it could break the rear tire loose, you could spin out, you could wheelie, you could do all kinds of crazy stuff. If you get a full throttle on a 300cc bike, you're probably not going to break the tire loose, and probably nothing crazy is going to happen. Nothing unpredictable will probably happen. So again, my first bike was a CBR 1000. And then I had a BMW 700 GS. Then I had a Hayabusa, which is a 1300. Then I had a Speed Triple, which is a 1050cc. And now I have the 1200 GS. So you could buy whatever bike you want, of course. And a 1000cc bike, you could ride that thing at 50 miles per hour. You control the throttle. You determine how fast the bike goes. Of course, it's going to be way more twitchy of a 1000cc versus a 600 because it's more power, but you still decide ultimately. Now, I bought the higher cc bikes and the powerful bikes because of traffic down here in San Diego. I just wanted the grunt and the torque to get around people because people are distracted, they're not paying attention and do whatever. But I didn't realize that, a 300cc bike can do the same for the type of riding that I do. Plus, it's way more expensive. I mean, how much money is a 1000cc R1 versus a R3? It's way more expensive. So I have a BMW 1200 GS right now. And the reason I have that big old bike because I travel long distances. I go on-road and off-road. I take it to the track. It's extremely comfortable. It has cruise control, yes, heated grips, electronic suspension. It's keyless. It has GPS. It's amazing. Plus, I take a passenger a lot. I ride passengers a whole lot on my bike. So because of the type of riding I do and how I ride the bike and what I do with it, that's why I have that bike. When people ask me, should I buy my type of bike that I have, I tell them, unless you go long distances, unless you take passengers, unless you plan on using this thing, don't buy it. I mean, it's an amazing bike, but it's a very expensive, heavy bike just to go back and forth to the coffee shop. I would not recommend buying the bike just because you have the money to buy it. It's a big, expensive bike. So every day I walk outside and I see my bike. If it's stolen one day, well, then I really don't care if it gets stolen. You come steal my bike because I'll just, call my insurance, I'll get a check and I'll pay it off. And I'll probably just go buy not that bike again. I'm not going to get another big old adventure bike. I'll probably just get a, like a Yamaha R3, or like my girlfriend's bike is a KTM 390 Duke. That's pretty much my track bike. Whenever I go to the track, I usually take her bike. And that bike is amazing. It could go well over 100 miles per hour. I take it to the track. Just stock by itself, that bike has good brakes, it's good power. It's an amazing bike. It's very capable and it's upright. I don't really like full sport bikes anywhere. almost choked myself out. I don't like the full sport bike anymore because I'm really leaning forward. And once I went to an upright bike, I don't think I'll ever go back to a full sport bike because once I'm upright, I'm much more comfortable and I just like the bike position better. But the main thing is, so that track I was talking about in a couple other videos before. So there's a track called Apex in Paris, California, where you pay $38 and you could ride any bike all day long. A Harley, BMW, 1000cc, a Mini, a Supermoto, whatever bike you want, $38 all day long. It's amazing. Now, when I go to the track and I'm on a 300cc bike, I'm riding around. And there's people there on BMW S1000 RRs, Yamaha R1Ms, they're on CBR 1000s, they're on all kinds of fast, powerful bikes. But how is it, if the bike means that much, how is it that they're not able to keep up with me? Explain to me why this guy is on a BMW S1000 RR, 200 horsepower stock, 4 times the horsepower this thing has, the KTM 390. And they're behind me in the straightaway because the bike's fast. You know, how much skill does it take to do this? But when you start to get into the corners, that's when you can really tell the difference between riders that are good riders and people that just have fast bikes. And I see a lot more of the people with fast bikes versus whatever. So less powerful bike, it's lighter, it's more manageable, and it's less expensive. If I were to go buy another bike again, I would just save up and pay the thing off cash. I don't want to have any more loans. My goal right now is to have the title to my bike and the title to my car. I want to pay this stuff off. But having a huge, powerful, expensive bike, everything is just more expensive. If something tips over, if a crash or something happens, that's going to be very, very expensive to fix versus a smaller CC bike. And this is what I've heard before. I heard someone say this, don't buy a 600cc bike because you're going to be bored and you're going to want a 1000cc bike within a couple weeks. I do not know anybody who can outperform a 600cc bike. I have friends that are racers. I have friends that really know what they're doing. They race expert class at Chuckwalla Raceway, and they ride 600cc bikes, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going down to a lower cc bike because I just can't handle this. I don't have the skills to handle that." Just think about Moto3 and Moto2 and MotoGP. Moto3, they're on 250cc bikes, and then Moto2, they're on 600cc, MotoGP, they're on thousands. They all start off like that. Valentino Rossi and Marc Marquez didn't start off on a MotoGP 1000cc bike. That's ridiculous. They didn't have the skills to manage it. They all started off on the lower cc bikes. And you're meaning to tell me that someone on the public roads just around here, just a normal rider, was telling somebody else, don't buy a 600cc, you're going to be bored, and you need to buy 1000 very quickly. How ridiculous is that statement? If everybody started off on a R3, CBR 300R, a KTM 390 Duke, a 500cc or less. Get a 300cc bike, whatever it is, and ride the crap out of it. Learn to ride a slower bike really, really fast. And once you get really good, you take a lot of courses with a lower cc, lighter bike, less power to manage in case something happens. And then if you take a lot of courses and you finally get better, and you get really, really good, well, jump up one if you want to. But I'd rather have a lower cc bike, less expensive, lighter, and really ride the crap out of it and be good at it than having a bike where I'm wasting the bike's time. Like again, my first bike was a CBR 1000 and I barely used 1% of that bike's potential. I had nowhere near the skills, nor do I now, to ride that bike to what it actually can do. It's ridiculous to have that much. It's like having a Lamborghini and ride around in the streets. So what? It's a Lamborghini. It looks cool, but you can only go 30 miles per hour just like everybody else, whatever the speed limit is. So people who say you're going to be bored with that type of bike is unbelievable. So last year I went to American Super Camp and Jake Gagne was there. He rides World Superbike right now. And he was like, I would never even ride on the streets. And he just lives in Oceanside. I wouldn't even ride on the streets. It's too insane. It's too dangerous. It's like these people that buy these huge, powerful sport bikes, I don't understand the mentality. You could buy such a smaller cc bike that's more manageable, it's lighter, and you can have so much fun with it. So people, if you're thinking about buying a bike or thinking about trading your bike in and getting a different bike, I would highly recommend getting a lower cc bike, learning how to ride it very, very well, and then if your skills get really good by taking a lot of courses and practicing, if you want to jump up, go for it. But Valentino Rossi didn't start off on a MotoGP bike, and if he's one of the best riders in the world, probably the best rider and racer ever, why in the world do you think you don't have to go through the same process as someone like that did? If everybody started off on these types of bikes, smaller cc bikes, then maybe after 3 years, there's something to do with the licensing or DMV where you could go up a cc a bike. I think that'd be a whole lot better. There'd be a whole lot more accidents, less crashes, less fatalities, because people, you could get your motorcycle license, you spend 2 days in the parking lot going 20, and then the very next day you could go buy R1. And that's a big issue. It's a different set of issues, but just use common sense. You don't have the skills to take a bike this powerful and just ride around and that be your first bike. Plus it's heavy and tall and everything else. So I tell people, if you have a 300cc bike, so I challenge someone to do this. It's just a thought experiment, not actually do this. Go and take a Yamaha R3 and go up a twisty mountain road. So you take off from the bottom and there's no cars. Say you're able to block the whole street. You take off and you redline first gear, and then you go to second gear and you're going all the way up the twisties. You redline second gear all the way to the max, and you shift up into third, and you go to third gear as fast as you can, all the way up, all the way up, all the way up. Now fourth gear, now fifth gear, and just redline it. If you could redline every gear of an R3 or a 300cc bike, and you're going up the twisty roads through the corners, if that is not fast enough for you, if you're so good where you're redlining a 300cc bike and you're going and you still want more power, it's not fast enough for you, well, I want to meet you, because I don't know anybody who could do that. I don't know anybody who has that much skills where they're going to be bored with that bike, not in a straightaway. The straightaways mean nothing. Who cares? Through the corners. If you're so fast, you could just you just redline, you just want more power going through corners, then you're an anomaly, you're an amazing, perfect rider somewhere, then sure, you could jump up. But I don't know anybody who could do that with the 300cc bike, let alone these types of bikes. I don't know anybody. I don't know any racer. I do not know anybody who could outperform the potential of, say, a 300cc bike and actually do that. And plus, most people are not professional racers. Most people don't go to the track anyways. So most people are just riding around in the streets. So what are you going to do with this huge, powerful bike on the streets? How fast are you really going to go? Are you going to get excessive speeding? Are you going to get a felony for crashing or going 150 miles per hour on the highway? It just doesn't make any sense. It's just ridiculous. So things to think about in a different way. Again, from my experience, I bought 4,000 plus cc bikes. And right now, if I could go back in time to when I first started riding, the first bike I was going to get, I would get an upright bike, kind of like my girlfriend's bike now, a KTM 390 Duke. And I would keep that bike, I would get the suspension upgraded, I would get tires, I'd get brakes, I'd get whatever I need to upgrade that bike, and I would just ride the crap out of that bike. And I'd get really, really good and take all the courses on that bike. And then, if I would have done that, I would have had much better awareness, and my mentality would have changed dramatically about types of bikes, and I wouldn't have made so many mistakes. And so much money I would have saved versus buying all these huge expensive bikes, training them in, buying another one, training in, buying another one. The experience that taught me, if I could go back, that's one thing I would definitely change. Lower CC bike, full gear, and just drown myself by taking courses as much as I possibly can. So I hope this helped kind of brainstorm if you're thinking about trading your bike in or buying a new bike. Some things to really think about. What are you actually going to do with this bike? Are you just commuting back and forth to work? Well, you probably don't need a bike that's 4 feet wide and weighs 1,000 pounds just to go back and forth to work. That's kind of ridiculous. You probably want a narrow bike if you live in California. You decide a lane split. Something that's be really good on gas, and something powerful enough where you can still get going with the speeds of the highway and not worrying about people flying past you as well. That's also dangerous. That's why scooters or whatever aren't allowed on the highways, because people go 80 on the highway. I know what the speed limit is, but people go 80. So if you at least can't do that without your bike feeling like it's going to fall apart, well then you need a little bit of power to ride with the highway. Especially in San Diego, you have to get on the highway to go anywhere. So you need some power just to go, but you don't need so much power where you're wasting the bike's time. You can't use it anyway. And if you do decide to use it and you're not on a racetrack, well, that's going to be a very bad ticket. You're probably going to get your bike impounded and everything else. So just thoughts to consider, things to keep in mind if you're thinking about buying a new bike or trading your bike in. To prevent yourself from crashing or getting something very terrible happen to you, you could trade that bad boy in, get a lower CC bike, and you would not imagine the fun you would have. Some of my really good buddies that ride, some of the best times they ever have going to that track in Paris called Apex, and they ride minis, 65cc bikes, and that's the funnest they ever ride. I know a lot of people that just ride those bikes only now. They sell their street bikes, they buy a little mini, and all they do is ride on mini tracks. They don't even ride on the street anymore because it's too dangerous. It's better to ride on a track in a controlled environment. Everybody's going the same direction. There's no cliff to fly off of. There's no speed limit. Everybody's in full gear. It's the safest place to get a ride. So things to consider. Hopefully this helps. Feel free to comment below. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.